Good morning, Chair, and good morning to all the other honorable members as well as everyone on the platform.
Thank you. I'm checking if there's other honorable members. I've greeted Honorable de Block. There are only only 4 members at the moment. Maybe others will still join. Chi, can you quickly remind members to log into the meeting?
Okay, Chair.
Honorable members, the time now is past. Chi, I want to check if we meet the required quorum. Oh, I see now Honorable
Yes, Chair, the
Temba,
members have joined. Yes.
Honorable Beach. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we need to let's start with our meeting. Greetings to honorable members and colleagues once more. Our meeting, honorable members, takes place during the World Water Week, which aims to advance a fair, more water secure future while being mindful of the impacts of climate change. Last week, on the 22nd of August, we reached a worrying milestone as the record-breaking heat in our oceans reached 21.1 degrees Celsius. With hot, dry weather expected, our water resources will be under pressure, and so will our communities and biodiversity. Let's all do our part by conserving water and strengthening oversight over the water management to help protect our precious and scarce resource. Today, we continue our discussion, which last took place during an oversight and workshop in the Waterberg region in Limpopo. We have not had time to follow up on the resolutions we adopted while in Limpopo, and we have to find time probably after the elections to resume our oversight of the captive lion industry and the broader issues surrounding captive breeding, hunting, trade, and the transition away from commercial predator exploitation. There are several issues that concern the ministerial task team and stakeholders like the NSPCA, and that needs serious follow-ups. Our responsibility as a committee is to ensure that government action is coherent, lawful, humane, and practical. So addressing this complexity requires strong cooperation across government departments, particularly agriculture and the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, and alongside provincial authorities, law enforcement, private landowners, sanctuaries, and communities. We should approach this matter by balancing animal welfare, environmental rights, preventing illegal trade, national reputation, and a socially and economically just transition. No one should be left behind. We appreciate stakeholder engagement because it often brings evidence-based insights that strengthen our oversight. This helps us oversee the protection of the environment for the present and the future generations. With those few words, honorable members and colleagues, I welcome all of you in today's meeting. Chi, can you then flight our agenda?
Okay,
Can I
Chair.
get
You may.
agenda flight? I am using a phone. I'm unable to see. Okay. Chi, can I check if there's any? Okay, thank you. Can I check if there's any apologies?
Yes, Chair. For today's meeting, I received the following apologies. The minister, he's attending a cabinet meeting. Deputy Minister Singh and also Deputy Minister Swartz, they are attending departmental engagements. And then Honorable Makasi is attending a meeting in Joburg. So those are the apologies, Chair, for today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chi. Can I then get a mover for the, let me check if there's no hand for apologies. Okay, there's no hand. Can we then get a mover for the adoption of the agenda? Is flighted. Honorable de Block.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to all on the platform. All protocol observed. I'd like to move for the adoption of the agenda, please.
Thank you, Honorable de Block. Can I get a second? Honorable Kate Pilangulu. Honorable Pilangulu.
Chairperson, and good morning to your good self and honorable members. Thank you.
Honorable Pilangulu, I am not sure whether it's my gadget, but I think you have a problem with the connectivity. I assume that you wanted to second Honorable de Block.
Chairperson.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, yes. I said good morning, Chair, and good morning, honorable members. I raise my hand to support Honorable de Block. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pilangulu. Chi, can you then go through the list of the delegation that is here with us?
Okay, Chair, the delegation is led by the DG. I've already mentioned that the minister and the two deputy ministers won't be able to join us. And then DG supported by the following officials. Mr. Matibe, he's the acting deputy director for biodiversity and conservation. Ms. Kumalo, she's the acting chief director for biodiversity management and permitting. Mr. Kobese, he's the acting chief director for law reform and policy coordination. Mr. Mbedzi, he's the deputy director for threatened or protected species implementation. And then chair from the South African National Parks, we are joined by Dr. Ferreira. He's the scientist. He's responsible for SANParks Scientist Services on large mammal ecologist. Mr. Omomu. He's the General Manager for Cultural Heritage Conservation Services. Mr. Pinar is the head for Scientific Services. And then Chair from Blood Lions, our presenter for today, Dr. Klarman, she's the campaign coordinator. And from Human Society International, it's Dr. Audrey Delsing. She's the executive director. That is the delegation chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Before I give to the Blood Lions representatives, DG, is there any overview that you would like to share with us? Or must I just go straight to the presentations? DG?
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning to members and all the guests and participants in the meeting. We do not have any opening, Chair, but we believe that this is a very critical matter, and also as a department, we would want to just be present to note the areas which then as a department we need to be taking forward in terms of policy, where policy is concerned. So, Chair, I think I'm here with the team from the department. Chair, I don't know whether my formal apology was sent through. I have to open a workshop. It's an international workshop which is online at 10. As soon as I'm done, it's 30 minutes. I'm going to then come back to the portfolio committee. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, noted, DG. Then, thank you for that. We will then move to the presentation, the briefing by Bloodline. Dr. Stephanie Klarman, over to you. I believe that you will be leading the presentation.
Thank you very much and good morning. I'm just going to take a second to share my screen and then we can begin. I just want to confirm that everybody can see my screen clearly.
Yes, we can see your screen clearly. You can also switch off your video. We see you. You see that you are not a robot. You can switch off when you are doing your presentation. Thank you,
Wonderful,
Dr.
thank you. Let me turn off my video quickly. There we go. Good morning, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to present to the Portfolio Committee today. I'd like to introduce myself and my colleague, Dr. Louise de Vol, who I'll be handing over to during the presentation later on, as the Bloodlines team and two of the researchers who engaged in this opinion poll around people's attitudes towards South Africa's commercial captive lion industry. The scale of South Africa's captive lion industry is extensive, with multiple commercial revenue streams that include tourism activities such as cub petting, walking with predators, viewing animals in captivity, voluntourism, the hunting of captive bred lions, and the live trade and trade in their bones, parts, and derivatives. The Ministerial Task Team on Voluntary Exit carried out a national audit of the industry in 2023. They estimated a total of around 8,000 lions and thousands of other exotic and indigenous predators within the industry, kept on about 350 facilities and farms. Majority of these facilities are found in the Free State, Northwest, and Limpopo provinces. As you will likely know, policy change has been initiated through a transparent and democratic process, including a parliamentary colloquium, the high-level panel process, and the Ministerial Task Team on Voluntary Exit, all of which has been supported by a growing body of scientific evidence-based information. However, this process has now been stalled with no engagement or updates from the department or former Minister Okamp and current Minister Maynier, despite the DA's own 2023 resolution to close the captive lion industry. Now, our research was designed to address two core objectives. The first of which was to understand how commercial captive lion breeding influences international tourist perceptions, travel intentions, and views on South Africa's global reputation. And then secondly, to assess South African citizens' attitudes towards captive lion breeding in relation to tourism, ethics, governance, and the future of the country's wildlife economy. The focus points of the opinion polls questions included implications for tourism, South Africa's national reputation, and its wildlife policy. The survey sample included international tourists from 4 key source markets, which included the UK, the US, Germany, and the Netherlands. And then we also included South African citizens to facilitate this comparison between international and domestic views. The opinion poll was conducted by Savanta, which is a professional data and market research company who recruited participants via established research panels that support broad demographic and geographic coverage. The data was weighted to be representative of each country according to age, gender, and region. The total sample size included just over 2,500 adults, evenly split across the 5 destinations, including South Africa. And as previously mentioned, the opinion poll was designed to provide a better understanding of how this particular industry may impact South Africa's broader tourism sector, and therefore did not focus on a particular type of tourist, such as hunters or photographic tourists, but included a broad cross-section of international tourists who had either visited South Africa recently or intended to visit our country in the near future. Now, by its nature, a poll is a survey of public opinion and does not rely on the sample size alone, but rather requires a representative sample of a particular population. So the margin of error, for example, for a population of 100,000 plus people would be about 3%, with a sample size of only 1,100 people. And this margin of error refers to the amount of variability we can expect around the responses to the poll questions. So overall, the poll results indicate that international tourists and South African citizens largely agree with the government's intended phase out of the captive lion industry. 77% overall agreed with a phase out, with respondents from the UK and Germany showing the highest levels of agreement at about 82%. From the South African sample, 71% agreed with the intended phase out. In contrast, only around 7% of the respondents disagreed, with a small percentage not having a strong opinion in either direction. The primary motivators behind tourists supporting a phase out of the captive lion industry focused on concerns for lion welfare at 49%, a belief that keeping these animals captive for profit is unethical at 40%, and approximately a third believing that animals deserve protection for their own sake. The primary motivators, I've lost my spot. There we go. Amongst the respondents who agreed with the government's intended phase out, you can see here on the graph that there are actually several motivators behind the previous 3, which I've just mentioned, with a lower but still significant percentage of these respondents mentioning other motivators. And I'll just give you a moment to take a look over what some of those were. So moving on, if South Africa were to delay the phase out of the industry further or even reverse it, many international tourists reported potential behavior changes that would directly impact our tourism sector. At least 70% of respondents stated that they would actually be deterred from visiting a country that continues to engage in captive lion breeding and breeding for profit. And then 65% would rather choose an alternative wildlife destination that does not support exploitative wildlife activities. And then lastly, 77% believe that South Africa's government should be prioritizing wildlife-friendly tourism over commercial breeding. The opinion poll largely supports the high-level panel's statements that the captive lion industry damages South Africa's reputation on several levels. The first of which is as a responsible and ethical tourist destination, where 69% of the respondents agreed. Secondly, as a conservation leader in Africa, where 66% of the respondents agreed. And then third, more than half of the respondents also felt it makes South Africa less democratic and less evidence-driven in its decision-making. The industry therefore affects South Africa in a vital sector that contributes significantly to our GDP and makes our political landscape look problematic, as well as affecting tourist perceptions of our contributions to conservation. South Africans also largely reject the exploitation of animals in captivity and stated a preference for South Africa to be exploring wildlife-friendly alternatives instead. Lion breeding and keeping was specifically considered to be unethical. And 3/4 agreed that South Africa would be more attractive and our economy would benefit if the ban on the commercial lion industry were to go ahead, with 66% finding it unacceptable to reverse or delay this phase out any further. Now, from this point, I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Louise de Vol, who will continue with the implications of these poll results.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'll just switch my camera on for a second so everybody can see that I'm not an AI robot either. Thank you very much. As Steph was saying, we really appreciate the opportunity. And obviously, I won't go through all the numbers again, as Dr. Klarman has covered these in great detail. However, I just want to do a little bit of an overview because the opinion poll provided several key results with direct implications for South African tourism. Some key concerns include reputational damage to South Africa and potential behavior change, which tourists would prefer to visit other destinations deemed more ethical in wildlife practices. Given that tourists extensively visit South Africa as a top wildlife and ecotourism destination, this may mean losing tourists to other SADC or East African countries with comparable safari experiences. Within South Africa, public sentiment also leans strongly towards away from the commercial captive lion breeding, concerns centered on wildlife exploitation, ethics, and South Africa's economic reliance on tourists, or tourism rather. Both audiences expressed a clear preference for wildlife-friendly tourism and viewed captive lion breeding as incompatible with South Africa's economic, ethical, and reputational interests. So, what are the potential implications of these opinion poll findings, in particular for our tourism sector? According to the World Travel and Tourism Council, tourism contributes nearly 9% to South Africa's GDP. In 2025, South Africa received nearly 10.5 million international tourists, with the 4 key source markets that were included in this poll accounting for nearly 12% of this total, which would account for 1.26 million arrivals. It is estimated that tourism sustains 1.8 million direct and indirect jobs. Every 13 international tourists create the opportunity for one person's employment. So that's very significant. This makes tourism one of South Africa's largest employers and has strong ripple effects across multiple industries, including transport, food, arts and crafts, and conservation, all of which impact job creation, poverty reduction, and inclusivity. So if 70% of those 4 key source tourism markets would be deterred from traveling to South Africa, we would stand to lose 66,000 tourism jobs if the intended phase were delayed further or even reversed. Overall, tourism contributes more to South Africa's GDP than transport, mining, and agriculture combined, making it vital for economic development, job creation, and poverty reduction. In comparison, the commercial captive line industry employs between 15 and 2,000 people across approximately 350 facilities nationwide, mostly in unskilled jobs according to the MTT's national audits. The socio-demographic profile of lion breeders and owners remains largely white Afrikaans-speaking males aged 51 to 60-year-olds, according to independent research. This strongly indicates that this industry has not undergone the necessary transformation as intended. South Africans' government's goal to improve equality and economic development. This was also identified as an issue by the HLP. Since the tourism sector is a significant contributor to our country's GDP and a key driver for job creation and poverty alleviation, the unintended consequences of allowing the commercial captive line industry to continue are far greater than the rewards of perpetuating this comparatively insignificant industry. When we look at the democratic consultative processes that have actually happened since 2018, with associated public and stakeholder consultation, this has been pretty significant as well. This started in August 2018 with a 2-day parliamentary colloquium with final recommendations to stop captive breeding of lions for commercial purposes and the hunting of captive bred lions. In 2020, a high-level panel was appointed by former Minister Creasy that went through significant stakeholder consultation, and at the end of their term, they recommended closure of this industry. In 2023, a ministerial task team on voluntary exit was appointed, also by former Minister Creasy, and an extended MTT was appointed by former Minister George. A policy position was gazetted in 2024, and the line prohibition notice that has gone through all due processes and still needs to be gazetted has also been got through all these processes. So former ministers Creasy and George, Steph, could you just, yes, thank you. Former ministers Creasy and George initiated the phase out of the commercial captive lion breeding industry, but this process has been stalled since November 2025 when Minister Oukamp took office. This delay in phasing out a contentious industry may have serious implications on multiple levels and across multiple sectors. Overall, the captive lion industry contribution to South Africa's economy is insignificant compared to the tourism sector and its employment capacity. By damaging South Africa's reputation as a tourism destination and conservation leader, it has the potential to seriously harm our economy, political reputation, and investment opportunities, and poses employment concerns in a country with already high rates of unemployment. Furthermore, the industry raises important red flags in several areas, not limited to animal well-being and conservation implications, but can have far-reaching consequences on a much broader level. A failure to act on the implementation of the phase-out by ignoring the established democratic processes that are based on scientific and peer-reviewed evidence and have already been undertaken can have severe economic consequences. There are several questions that the Portfolio Committee can direct to current Minister Meyer, including why the phase-out process, as initiated by Minister Creasy in 2021, has been stalled. Secondly, the line prohibition notice that I mentioned just earlier was approved by the National Council of Provinces in March this year. It has not been gazetted by the Minister. What are the specific reasons for this inaction, given that 5 months have since passed? Another question around the ministerial task team that laid out a set of recommended exit options and pathways towards closure that was approved by Cabinet in 24. A parliamentary question around the status of filler, fair industry for lions, leopards, elephants, and rhinos. In May this year, former Minister Oakham responded that it was not possible to commit to a time frame at this stage. Question would be, has the department considered or created a plan with a timeline to implement the intended phase out? An extended ministerial team was appointed by Minister George on continuing the voluntary exit process with identified candidates. Their term came to an end in November 25. When will the minister make their final report public? As this still hasn't been done. In October 25, Minister George published a notice for public comment on his intention to set a zero line bone quota. This democratic process seems to have disappeared without further clarification. Will the minister publish this notice? And ultimately, if the government has already determined through its policy position and other democratic consultative processes that commercial captive lion breeding and keeping should end, and has already developed and approved mechanisms that can prevent the industry from expanding and initiates a phase out, what is the policy, legal, evidence-based, and or administrative justification for allowing this industry to continue operating without a clear roadmap to phase out this exploitative and contentious industry? I would like to thank you all for your time. I'm sure there will be questions, but I think it would be better if we take the Q&A after our colleagues from Humane World for Animals South Africa have actually finished their presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Louis, for your presentation, and also Stephanie. I think the following one will be Dr. Deslink. If I'm correct, Chair.
Yes, Chair, you're correct.
Yeah, Dr. Deslink. Over to you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good morning, members. Good morning to our Sandbox colleagues and to all others that have joined. I'm just going to take a moment to find the presentation and to put it in the correct format. Confirm that you can all see the presentation.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to try and then switch off my camera, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much again for the opportunity, and thank you to my colleagues from Blood Lions for their presentation. So this morning I'll be presenting on behalf of my colleagues, Dr. Matthew Church and Mr. Tony Gerrans, on behalf of Humane World for Animals. So we were formerly called Humane Society International. So I am the Wildlife Director for our organization, and today I'll be talking about elephants, tourism, and South Africa's reputation with regards to the international traveller and the resident perspectives on elephant culling. So South Africa's elephant management policy has been undergoing some revisions, and there have been renewed calls for elephant culling that have reopened the debate around conservation, welfare, tourism, and public trust. This issue is not only ecological, but it has direct implications for South Africa's international reputation and our tourism economy. So this morning's presentation will be broken down into 6 sections, and it will provide timely evidence on public trust, reputational risk, and social acceptability. This is relevant to South Africa's biodiversity policy frameworks and commitments to evidence-based welfare-conscious decision-making. So Humane World for Animals commissioned Savanta, a data market research company based overseas, to assess tourist and public perceptions of elephant culling. The research tested how culling could affect South Africa's image as a tourism destination. It also examined support for lethal versus non-lethal elephant management options.
Doctor, just a minute. Your slides are not moving. Your slides, just be cautious that your slides are not moving.
Okay, I'm not sure why that is. Okay, let me do this rather than. Are you able to see this?
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that better now?
It's much better.
Okay,
Thank you.
let's try again. Apologies for that. So we were also looking to examine support for lethal versus non-lethal elephant management options. As we heard from our Bloodlines presentation, tourism contributes around 9% of South Africa's GDP. And the sector supports approximately 1.5 to 1.8 million direct and indirect jobs. Tourism is especially important as a labor-absorbing sector in a country with high unemployment, specifically in a country such as ours. International arrivals reached 4.2 million between January and May 2026, and this was actually a 12.8% increment from the year before. So the management authorities for both Northwest Parks and Ezemvelo have already presented to this committee, and they have proposed that approximately 2,000 elephants could be culled. And so the rationale for such a management intervention is obviously not the subject of today's presentation. So our poll was conducted in almost the same way as the Bloodlines WAP poll. It was conducted by Savanta to ensure credibility and consistency. The one difference from our Bloodlines colleagues was that we doubled the sample size. And so our survey reached 5,000, just over 5,000 adults across the same source markets, which included South Africa, the UK, the US, Germany, and the Netherlands. Our poll was online and took place between the 5th to the 17th of June 2026, and each market contributed roughly 1,000 respondents. And similarly, the results were weighted by age, gender, and region to be nationally representative. Oops. The slide shows who participated after the demographic weighting was completed. Interestingly, South African respondents skew younger. Roughly 2/3 were aged between 18 to 44. Whilst the 4 international markets have an older profile, with the 65+ age group the largest age segment. Weighting helps ensure that these results reflect each market rather than differences in the raw sample. And so with that context, let's turn to what our international travelers told us. So the findings show that there is strong concern about elephant culling. 60% of the respondents said they would consider a different country if South Africa reinstated culling. 47% of respondents said that they would be less likely to visit South Africa at all if culling was adopted. This means that a return to culling would provide a large share of international visitors a concrete reason to choose another destination over South Africa. Of the 47% that were less likely to visit South Africa, their actions would shift from avoiding the area or province where culls occur to avoiding safari and wildlife activities altogether, to spending less money on their trip, and to shortening their actual stay. This means that this would have the greatest impact on the regions and the safari economy that depend most on wildlife tourism. So the potential tourism impact is concentrated in South Africa's most important overseas markets. Germany shows the strongest reaction. 53% say the culling would make them less likely to visit. And this matters because Germany is South Africa's third largest overseas source market. The risk is therefore commercial as well as reputational. Culling could weaken demand in the markets on which tourism depends the most. Sorry, now the mouse is being super sensitive. In every market, including South Africa, opposition to culling outweighs support, from 69% in Germany to 44% in South Africa. 80% of the respondents agreed that non-lethal methods should be prioritized over killing wherever possible. And interestingly, this was the single most agreed statement of the entire survey. This is an important statement, and I'm going to come back to this and unpack it in greater detail. Next, we are going to unpack what South Africans told us. So South Africa has about 44,000 elephants, and they are concentrated in relatively few reserves. Kruger holds roughly 3/4 of the national population, around 30,000 elephants at the last complete estimate, and this spans Limpopo and Mpumalanga. Despite the shared elephant landscape, Limpopo shows slight net support for culling, while Mpumalanga shows opposition. Opposition is also clear in provinces with sizable populations, which include KwaZulu-Natal and Madikwe and Pilanesberg in the northwest. The Eastern Cape's Addo National Park has more than 600 elephants, yet opposition still outweighs support. The strongest opposition comes from the Northern and the Western Cape, where elephant populations are comparatively small. So public opinion is not determined simply by local elephant numbers. Concerns about welfare, conservation values, and tourism appear to matter across provinces. So South Africans see the risks too. 77% of South African respondents said that tourism would suffer if large-scale culling was resumed. 81% of South African respondents agreed that culling as a primary option would damage South Africa's conservation reputation. 69% of domestic travelers said that they themselves would visit elsewhere if a reserve or a province introduced culling. So both international and local respondents agree that culling could therefore weaken destination appeal, international reputation, and tourism competitiveness. Both domestic and international respondents clearly favored non-lethal elephant management options. Out of all the management options available, culling was consistently ranked the lowest, with only 5% support. Preferred non-lethal management approaches included range expansion, wildlife corridors, immunocontraception, water source management, and no active intervention as the last option. Note that this aligns completely with the recommendations of the high-level panel report and the norms and standards of elephant management, as well as peer-reviewed and commissioned reports, for example, Zunga and Slaughter of 2022, Van der Water et al. Of 2024, and Olivier et al. Of 2022. So note that public confidence is strongest when elephant management is evidence-based, transparent, and guided by ecological science and animal welfare. So we asked what would reassure the public, and respondents agreed that if culling were ever considered, they expected clear safeguards. They stated that their concern would be reduced when decision-making included proof that humane, non-lethal alternatives were genuinely attempted first, that culling was only considered as an absolute last resort, that there was transparency, that there was solid public consultation, that there was independent scientific review, and that there was welfare oversight. The message is clear. Trust depends on least harm measures, credible evidence, transparency, and consultation, and this strengthens trust and policy legitimacy. These expectations lead directly to the proven humane alternatives we'll look at next. So I've already presented to this committee on immunocontraception as a credible, reversible, safe, humane, non-lethal alternative to elephant management. Recent narrative has suggested that immunocontraception is a disruptive and costly intervention, despite peer-reviewed evidence to counter these claims, and the overwhelming evidence that demonstrates the costs and consequences to elephant sociality, demographics, and behavior caused by culling through mass or selective culling approaches exists for decades. This slide demonstrates that the methodology has not failed. Immunocontraception has delivered safely for 25 years, treating more than 1,800 females across 50+ reserves. The deeper problem is inconsistent policy implementation, not the absence of workable non-lethal tools, which include immunocontraception and range expansion as examples. The elephant norms and standards have been legally effective since February 2008. The issue is whether management plans, alternatives, and last resort safeguards are being applied consistently or adequately. The high-level panel led to the 2023 Biodiversity White Paper, yet implementation of habitat expansion, connectivity, and coordinated management has not yet kept pace. The National Elephant Heritage Strategy now calls for a national metapopulation approach, reserve management plans, and landscape-level solutions, including corridors, translocation, and contraception, with culling hopefully as a last resort. The emerging NBSAP 2026 to 2035 and South Africa's 30 by 30 commitments similarly prioritize protected area expansion, ecological connectivity, restoration, and coexistence. We should not allow delayed implementation of all of these measures to manufacture an emergency that is then used to justify lethal control. The evidence supports a systemic governance and delivery failure, not a failure of humane elephant management. Before irreversible action is considered, and government should demonstrate what non-lethal measures, range expansion opportunities, and existing policy commitments were or were not fully implemented, and why they were insufficient. So large-scale elephant culling carries a clear risk to South Africa's tourism revenue and conservation brand, carrying a reputational risk that is both domestic and international. South Africa's standing as a responsible wildlife destination depends on how elephant management decisions are made and communicated. Public perception is now a key factor in conservation policy legitimacy. The National Elephant Heritage Strategy promotes a social ecological approach to elephant management. However, it also presents a policy tension by linking elephants to both tourism and utilization through culling. The survey suggests these objectives may be misaligned. Culling risks undermining the public trust and tourism value that elephant-based conservation and utilization are meant to support. The choice is not conservation versus tourism. Humane management allows both to succeed. So this brings us to the practical solutions that we are asking the committee to support. We are asking that the existing legal and policy framework be applied coherently, not bypassed. The elephant norms and standards require an improved management plan and consideration of alternatives before culling. The revised 2023 version was thoroughly consulted, and this version should be formally promulgated. TOPS provides the member permit control layer for restricted activities involving elephants, including capture, transport, and killing. NEMO adds a risk-averse, precautionary approach and meaningful participation by affected communities and stakeholders. The National Elephant Heritage Strategy should now provide the umbrella for updated norms, research, reserve plans, and the national metapopulation approach, which is subservient to our overarching environmental policy. The committee should therefore demand current science, independent scrutiny, transparent decisions, and genuine consultation. Where humane management options and agreements are already approved, implementation should be timely and accountable. The practical test is simple: exhaust feasible non-lethal options before considering irreversible action. Elephant culling is not only a conservation decision, it is a tourism, reputation, and public trust decision. Decisions should account for ecological outcomes, animal welfare, community and stakeholder legitimacy, and tourism competitiveness. Long-term conservation reputation too. Protecting elephants and protecting South Africa's wildlife economy are aligned objectives. The evidence shows that non-lethal, transparent, and welfare-conscious approaches are most consistent with South Africa's conservation leadership and tourism interests. And with that, I thank you and the committee for your time. Our team are available for questions, and I'd just like to point out that the full report is available for download for those that are interested. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Audrey. Honorable members, those were the two presentations. I am now going to note hands. I see the hand of Honorable Managa, followed by Honorable Beach, Honorable Mukwena. For now, okay. Honorable Mukwena will be followed by Honorable De Block, Honorable Mkhize, Honorable Kumalo, Honorable Pitas. I think I will have to note Honorable Bilangulu. She indicated she has a problem with raising her hand. I don't know. Yeah, she will be the last one to speak. In that order, honorable members, Honorable Managa.
Yes, thank you so much, Honorable Chair. Let me start by greeting the presenters, the representatives from the department, our staff members, and everyone who is listening to these presentations. Honorable Chair, we've been I'll start with the last presentation done by Dr. Audrey. We've been deliberating about the elephant overpopulation. I think it's the third year now. And I think you will agree with me that the problem didn't start during this administrative era. Doctor, I would like to thank you for the presentation that you give. The report is so comprehensive because it was done scientifically. As the committee, even last week, we were discussing about the very same issue of the overpopulation in our game reserves, the Madikwe and the Pilanesberg. And it is clear that there's a problem that requires a practical and a sustainable solution. When she was presenting, I couldn't clearly identify from her presentation the methodology that she was using to determine the population, especially let me talk about the population sample, the sampling or the sample. I would think if maybe this study was done maybe in Northwest for the local people, especially those who are staying around around that park or around that game reserve, the results I think would have been different. Because if the elephant numbers house chairperson at Madikwe are to be reduced, or otherwise maybe actively manage to bring the population within the game ecological care capacity, we're talking about more than 1,600, and the capacity is about 500 or less. what impact would this have on tourism? Could effective elephant population management potentially strengthen the long-term sustainability of tourism, or is there a risk that is reducing elephant numbers could negatively affect the tourism numbers and revenue? Because let's be honest, those elephants are too many there, and they become danger to the society around that park. Coming to the next presentation, we do understand that there's a report that was done by the high-level panel. That report was generated many years ago, and it's not implemented to date. So I so wish if the minister, I'm happy because the HOD it's here. I so wish if the minister was here so that we should also, because there are some questions that were raised by the doctor and yeah, by Stephanie, who presented in that first presentation. So we've been discouraging this issue also of lions that are living in captivity. But we just want to hear what measures are being implemented to ensure that South Africa's management of captive lions promotes animal welfare and conservation. Because to be honest, this one of the captive lion is damaging our reputation as the country. The unemployment rate of our country currently, as per the report of SSA, is 33.6, which is a bit high. And if we were to discourage the tourists to visit our country, it would mean it's going to be difficult to create more jobs. I'm not contradicting myself. I know what I'm talking about. Lion that are to be bred and be kept in captivity, we discouraged it ever since we started as a committee, and we're not going to support it. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Manaka. Honorable Beach.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much, firstly, for the two wonderful presentations. I think first and foremost, I've been covered slightly by what Honourable Member Managa has said. This is an extremely emotional and emotive topic. I think the issues surrounding conservation in general, I think we have a lot of common ground globally to try and do our best as custodians for these animals, and making sure that these animals are treated in a way that is not only humane, but also constructive to the long-term survival of these animals, as well as contributing extensively to the South African economy through our natural heritage and through tourism as well. I want to perhaps start also with the presentation on elephant management. Thank you very much. I think it's a very interesting look at people's perceptions surrounding the issues identified in elephant management. I think one of the aspects that we must be wary of is to not allow perceptions and public opinion to dictate something that should be an extremely scientific process. I think as Honourable Managa has indicated, we have been in a discussion now surrounding the question of how and what management activities should take place in a very dire state of elephant population management in various areas, specifically surrounding Northwest, where I think we are sitting in a crisis situation. Some of the questions that I would like to pose, specifically surrounding the survey that was done, would be surrounding the methodologies and the questions posed. I would like to understand, was an indication given to within the survey as to if culling was rolled out as a last resort, how would that impact be able to be mitigated? So I think some of the questions that I would like to pose is non-lethal and more humane options have been indicated as being preferable. Have we now come to a point where those methodologies have been exhausted? I think that is a question. Can contraceptives as well as range extension be used to mitigate the current situation in the Northwest specifically? And then another question that I would like to just get clarity on, was it clearly stated to respondents that if no management or no lethal management took place, that there would be dire consequences, both from a long-term ecological sustainability, but also to the very animals which we are discussing? There would be significant inhumane harm done to these elephants, which are confined in human-managed areas. Was that communicated clearly within that? So I'll leave those two questions. Then I just want to say, surrounding the breeding of captive lions, thank you very much for your excellent presentation as well. I think the committee has made a clear commitment in regards to our condemnation of the unscrupulous and unregulated practices which has been described. I think one of the aspects that I would like to say, within the new framework, we need to move away from these practices that we've described without precluding humane and sustainable consumptive conservation practices on which I believe that the Southern African conservation model has been built. It is not only ecotourism, but various other activities that has actually seen the resurgence of wildlife in Southern Africa specifically. So whilst being a great proponent of the stopping of this intensive lion breeding, I'm a big proponent of allowing game ranch activities and various other activities to continue and to allow the South African economy to prosper from the very natural resources in a very sustainable way. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Pitch. Honorable Mokoena.
Thank you very much, Chair, and greetings to everyone on the platform. Given that around 8,000 lions remain in captivity What concrete mechanism is being proposed to fund, house, or ethically manage these animals during a phase out to ensure their welfare is not compromised by abandonment or mass euthanasia? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mokoena. Honorable de Blok.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning once again to everyone in the meeting today. And thank you very much to our presenters as well for the presentations that were made. Chair, I think I have a few questions. We're all politicians on this committee, and as a result, we're all very well aware of polls and polling and the necessary skepticism that must come and the questions that must come around different polls. Some polls are better than others. So I think it's important, like Honorable Peach said, that we do ask necessary questions of the methodology. Before I do get to that, I just want to point something out that was missing from each of the presentations around well, perhaps mostly the lion-based presentation around the gap between the gazetted notice by or intention by Minister George and the fact that it's been now perceived as stalled since November 2025. Obviously, we had a new minister, Minister Okamp, that came in. Minister Okamp then had to have his own briefings on the subject. He was only in office for a couple of months and had to deal with various other priorities that needed to be balanced, like the R1 billion worth of damage to the Kruger National Park, for instance. My understanding is that he was receiving briefings from the ministerial task team when he was then shuffled out to agriculture, and we now have a new minister who on his own also needs to apply his own mind to this task, because it is a ministerial decision that needs to be taken. It's not something that's been delegated to a DG or a DDG, and therefore the minister must apply his own mind and must be given the space to do so. And I understand that's going to be frustrating for some people who want to see progress on this. I think all of us on the committee want to see progress on this, but we also don't want to open ourselves up. And I think this is where our activists must take special attention or listen carefully. And we don't want to open up a case where a minister rushes through a decision and then is now taken to court on the basis of the PAJA, the Administrative Justice Act, for not having applied his mind properly and considered all factors. So I do want to warn against us putting undue pressure on new ministers who do need to give the proper time and attention to this very important issue. And I'd like to echo the comments of my other two members who've spoken before me about the committee's support for the direction that we'd like to see this go. But I do want to make that warning up front, Chair. I want to start with the presentation by Bloodlines. I'd like to ask, was existing awareness of captive lion breeding polled among the people who answered these questions? Because I would think that very few are aware of this in the first place, which would affect the ability of this policy to affect tourism as claimed in the values, and also what information was supplied to people that were polled before answering questions, because that obviously also has a huge influence on how people answer questions, is what information is made available to them before they make those answers. I think those are two important things. Then the claim that 70% of people would be deterred, and this goes for elephants as well, although the number was slightly lower, from traveling to South Africa because of these captive lion breeding and elephant culling practices. A lot of the language used is would be or will, but in the case of lions, we have already this industry has grown over a couple of decades now. And we haven't seen, as far as I'm aware, a downturn in safari tourism in South Africa. In fact, if you plotted the rise of safari tourism in South Africa, it would probably overlap quite neatly with the rise in captive lion breeding. So, how confident are you in the claim that captive lion breeding deters tourists if that's not been seen in actual data to this point? And then the margins of error, again, goes to both presentations. Dr. Klarman mentioned that there's a 3% margin of error for populations of more than 100,000 people, where 1,000 people have been polled. Yet, South Africa, for instance, has 70 million people, and we polled 500. So what are the margins of error for each survey? those weren't reported, because that will have a big difference, or a big impact, should I say, on the outcomes and the claims that can be made, and especially the extrapolations that were made later by Mr. Val around the actual impact in rand terms on the tourism industry. Chair, those are my questions on the methodology. I have a couple of other points to make. The first is that we do need to, while being serious about shutting this industry down, need to be careful to be realist as opposed to alarmist. And if we adopt alarmist positions or exaggerated positions, we could hold the tourism industry hostage as leverage to get this issue over the line. And I don't think that is in the interest of South Africans. I don't think it's in the interest of conservation, which is often supported by the tourism industry. So we just need to be very careful about the way that we frame this. As has been mentioned, social media can have quite an inflammatory effect, especially when people are not armed with the full story and the full amounts of information. And we do have proper channels to go through and proper protocols that should be followed, that we can go through to do this in a proper, justified, as you said, Chair, in your opening remarks, in a way that is a just transition out of this industry. Then, Chair, I also want to just bring up the point that it's particularly ironic to me that a lot of the risks that are cited is that South Africa will lose its position as a conservation leader. Yet the reason we have a surplus of elephants is because we are a conservation leader. And Honourable Peach alluded to this, that our growth in wildlife in South Africa is an anomaly on the African continent. Our conservation industry in South Africa is doing exceptionally well in the face of declines across pretty much the rest of Africa in terms of lions and elephants. Yet we are at basically capacity for both of those species in conservation areas. So I do think there is some irony there that does need to be considered when we make those kinds of claims, and that we need to include that in our communications. And I thought Dr. Delsing's slide on what factors will mitigate the opinions of people was particularly important for the department to take note of when they're communicating on this subject. It also is another mitigating factor that it's only a particular type of tourist that would probably be affected by these kinds of decisions. Someone coming to Cape Town for business, or someone coming to come and lie on Clifton Beach, is unlikely to be affected by opinions around elephant culling or captive lion breeding in South Africa. So again, we don't want to overstate the impacts that these polls are making. And I believe that the non-lethal, transparency, the public consultation, all of those mitigating factors fit very well within our current norms and standards. And I think we would like to see those carried through into any revised norms and standards that will be put forward by the department. Chair, I think I'm covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy. Honourable Mkhize.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Greetings to everyone. I'd also like to join our members and acknowledge the presentation, and also accept the board presentation from presenters. I have just a few questions as well that I'd like to ask, particularly, especially to Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis, you state that the phase-out process has stalled from your engagement with government. What specifically has changed since the policy process began in 2021? Have you seen any new scientific, conservation, legal, or socio-economic evidence that would justify delaying or reconsidering the phase-out? Based on your monitoring of this process, where do you locate the blockage? Legislation, regulations, administration, industry pressure, or political decision-making? What evidence leads to that conclusion? Can you take the committee, Doctor, through the major decision and commitment made since 2021? And identify the point at which implementation began slowing down? I'm saying this because this would assist us as a committee to determining whether we are dealing with an ordinary administrative delay or a substantive change in government direction. You estimated that South Africa could potentially lose 66,000 jobs if tourists choose alternative destination. Can you please explain the methodology behind that figure? Is this realistic economic risk scenario or simply a theoretical extrapolation from the opinion poll, as other members have mentioned before? Have these findings concerning tourism jobs and South Africa's international reputation been formally presented to the department? If so, what response did you receive, and has government provided you with evidence disputing your findings? Lastly, as you identify the ungazetted notice, unpublished extended MTT report, implementation plan, and zero-line bone quota consultation as outstanding issues, you specifically raised the failure to gazette the lion prohibition notice. From your understanding, what is preventing its gazetting? And have you been given any credible legal or administrative justification for the delay? Those were my questions. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mkhize. Honorable Khumalo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, let me join my colleagues for acknowledging the presentations from both organizations. I'm just having two questions, Chair, to the first presenter. One, Chair, which international organizations does Blood Lions work with? Secondly, with only 1,568 to 2,069 direct jobs in the captive lion sector, what detailed funded transition plan is being proposed to reskill those workers if facilities are shut down immediately? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Khumalo. Honorable Peters.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd also like to welcome the two presentations and also not to repeat questions. I think, Chair, you know, the issue is it's no longer whether South Africa should exist, the commercial captive lion industry. The main question is why implementation remains incomplete, who is accountable, what the deadline is, and whether government has the data, the funding, legal tools, and coordination capacity to achieve the policy objectives. And then I just like to also look at the future risks that we obviously have then with, you know, with the breeding of lions. What safeguards are being put in place to prevent the industry from simply shifting to tigers, cheetahs, leopards, or other predators, as well as how will government prevent facilities from continuing operations illegally once restrictions are introduced? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Peters. Honorable Pilankulu. Honorable Kate. I see your hand is up.
Chair.
Yes.
Yes. She requested that I read her questions because she's boarding a flight now.
Oh, okay. Okay then. You can do that, Chi.
All right. So the first question is, how was the sample population and sample size for the poll selected? And how did the preferred approach eliminate possible biases? The presentation also talks about a total loss of 66,000 jobs by assuming 70% of all tourists from the UK, US, Germany, and Netherlands would refrain from visiting South Africa. Is it a realistic or is it realistic to assume that the entire 70% who object to captive lion breeding would outright boycott the destination rather than simply choosing non-exploitative wildlife activities upon arrival? Those are the two questions, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you,
I
Chair.
will send them to the presenters as well.
Okay, no, it's fine then. Honorable Manaka, I see your hand is still up. Is that a legacy hand?
It's not a legacy hand. I raised my hand after member De Block has spoken. Chair, I need to raise
Manaka,
it. Do you
Honorable
hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes,
Remember,
yes.
you
It's
were
not
the
a
first
legacy.
one to speak.
It's not a
Okay.
legacy hand. I think I need to express this, Chair. I think I'm under the impression that members of the committee are members of the committee, and I don't think we can act as spokespersons or we can respond on behalf of ministers or deputy ministers in their
No,
absence.
Honorable Manaka, can I rule you out of order on that? Each member has a right to speak on his views. Can I thought that you had a question that you had forgotten.
But not on behalf of the minister.
No, can you
But
please?
we should just
I'm ruling you out of order. Honorable Manaka,
acknowledge that
please.
we
I
have
am ruling you
matters
out of
here
order.
that are concerning our people,
Honorable Manaka,
and they need to be
can you
resolved
if there's a
by the
question that you
portfolio
would like to
committees.
raise, if
Mm,
there is a question that you would like to raise on the
I
presentations,
wanted to raise my concern because we need to resolve matters. If the ministers are to respond,
no,
in the absence of the
Honorable Manaka,
ministers, no members must respond.
that was
Chair?
his view. That was his views, Honorable Manaka. If you do not have anything else to say, I would like to move and move for with my question as well. Can you lower your hand, Honorable Manaka, please? From my side, honorable members and colleagues, I have a question on the presentation that was made on the by the blood lion. I want to check if the organization is bringing what is the organization is proposing to manage or curb the number of unmonitored lions and bridge the gap between lion welfare and well-being and the community safety and well-being. I want to check your proposals as the organization on that you are bringing in trying to resolve all that. I am now going to give to the presenters to respond to the questions that were raised by the honorable members. We'll start with Dr. Stephanie, followed by Dr. Lewis, and then it will be Dr. Desling. After that, DG, if there's anything that you would like to comment on, I will give over to you because I received a message that you are back. Over to you, Dr. Klaman.
Chair, if I may take the opportunity to start maybe answering some of these questions. I think there's quite a bit of overlap, and I will really do my best to answer the questions to my best abilities. And please, any of the honourable members, if I didn't actually answer your question properly, then do tell me, because it was difficult to follow all the questions. We have tried to note them down. So yes, I will try to go through them. One, Dr. Malanga, she asked what measures are being implemented to promote welfare and conservation. I think if we go back to both the high-level panel process and also the ministerial task team reports, there was quite a lot of recommendations made in terms of making sure that animal welfare was being considered, and that conservation is of ultimate importance. I think I have to add here that certainly with the captive lions, there is very little to no conservation benefits from that actual industry. It's an industry that is totally based on the captive breeding of those animals for commercial purposes. I think that was about it. Honourable Peach, I think there were quite a few questions with regards to the actual methodology and the questions posed. We have actually shared the report link in at the end of on the last slide of the presentation. And I think the reason, and as my colleague Dr. Delsing was saying as well, we went and used Savanta because they are a proper and professional marketing organization. And they have certainly, in some cases, changed the way questions were phrased to avoid the bias that might be coming through the questions. And I think if I may also bring in some of Honourable the blog's questions as well, is around the way that questions are posed in a poll, which can always be tricky. Any poll has got, as we all know, it's got pros and cons, but it gives us a good indication of potential public behavior changes. And that is what we have been focusing on with these polls. In the report, there is more on the actual methodology, and we can certainly provide the exact questions as well. We have made sure that people were aware of what the captive lion breeding industry involved, and the people who were included in the poll were also people who had visited South Africa or were planning to visit South Africa in the very near future. So it was a very focused group of people that we asked the questions to. Yes, tourism has grown together with maybe the growth in captive lion breeding. This is always a very difficult thing to answer. That would really require looking into how both of these industries grew. Is it correlation? Is it causation? That is something I cannot answer. But I think when we look at how, but also how public sentiment in terms of the captive lion breeding industry has changed over time as well. And the fact that the government has made an intention in 2021 to phase out this industry, that can change the public perception and also their behavior in terms of traveling to South Africa. And maybe I can go and jump ahead here in terms of, because there have been a few questions in terms of the loss of these 66,000 jobs. Steph, I don't know whether you could maybe put up the presentation again on the actual page 12. So we know that the 4 source destinations, there's a 4 source God, can't speak anymore. The 4 key source tourism markets were actually UK, US, Germany, and the Netherlands, and they amount to 12% of South Africa's international tourist arrivals, which is just over 10.5 million people. So if we look at the statement, and this comes from the president himself, that every 13 international tourists can provide an opportunity for one person's employment, then, and we take 70% of the 10,000, or no, the 1.2 million arrivals from those 4 source markets, and we divide that by 13 because every 13 tourists can provide one person's employment. That provides us with a 66,000. And yes, it's we extrapolated this. Obviously, it's very unlikely that the full 70% may not be traveling all to South Africa anymore, and may choose other destinations. But even if we take a small percentage of that, it can very quickly outweigh the number of people that have been provided with opportunities to work in the captive lion breeding industry, which is at best just over 2,000 people, as was established by the ministerial task team. So I think even if a smaller percentage than 70 would stop or be deterred from traveling to South Africa, we could still lose more jobs in tourism than are provided in the captive lion breeding industry. And I think if I can also then jump ahead to Kamalo's question, is that a lot of these jobs, as part of the MDT, and I sat on this panel, we had a lot of discussions, and these just over 2,000 jobs that the captive lion breeding industry sustains are very often not people that work full-time in the captive lion breeding industry. They may also be involved in other agricultural activities. So if the industry would be phased out, some of those people will most likely be diverted to a full-time position in these other agricultural activities, because a lot of the lion farmers, they don't have the lion farming as a primary or only agricultural activity. It's very often a diversification of what they were doing. So there's also been in the ministerial task team, as well as the extended ministerial task team, we've looked at transition and the provision of alternative sources of employment and activities. Things like solar farms have been suggested, and I believe the extended ministerial task team has actually looked into some of the voluntary exit candidates and trying to transition them into other sustainable practices where people could also be employed. So definitely there are transition plans for those employees, but I think a large percentage of those people will be staying within the agricultural business and will just be rerouted away from the captive lion breeding. Yes, there is definitely a risk that, as Honourable Peters asked, that industry may be shifting to other animals and would already would also go into illegal operations. We know that there is an illegal element already within the industry. We know that since 2019, there has not been a lion-bone export quota in South Africa, and still consignments of bones have been intercepted in both OR Tambo as well as in other airports or other ports in Southeast Asia. So we know there is already an illegal element and illegal operations existing, and that is an enforcement matter. So it needs to be very clear that enforcement practices are being strengthened to avoid that. And yes, there is a real risk of shifting to other animals, in particular tigers. It's already happening, and that's one of the reasons why the ministerial task team actually recommended not to stop with lions, but look at the phase out of the predator industry as a whole. I'm just trying to see what I missed here. I think animal well-being has been covered, and I know there have been training has happened for Mpumalanga EMIs in terms of better animal welfare and well-being knowledge and training in terms of their inspections. Steph, is there anything that I have actually missed? Do you want to jump in here as well? Because I'm scrolling down maybe what I should also say is, as Bloodlines, there was also a question about who we work with. We work amongst others with World Animal Protection, and we did this poll in collaboration with that organization. Yes, so the phase out, Honorable Nkisi, I will try. I hope I'm answering your questions correctly. We believe that the phase out has been stalled certainly from November 2025 onwards. The extended ministerial task team's term came to an end. Minister George intended to extend their term, which did not happen under Minister Okamp. He also has not published their final report, and I'm just trying to see. So yes, that report has not been published at all. In addition, the lion prohibition notice is actually a notice that was recommended by the ministerial task team in about June, July 2023, when Minister Creasy was still in position. This has gone through 2 public participation processes. It's gone through all other due processes. The NCOP has approved, and this was happened in March this year. And since there has been no movement in terms of gazetting this prohibition notice. So this is a prohibition notice that has been ongoing since about mid-2023. So I think in terms of, even though, as Honourable de Blok said, ministers may have to apply their mind on these issues, I think with this particular line prohibition notice, it has gone through all due and democratic processes, and that process finished in March 25, and there has been no movement. So those were the reasons that we base our conclusion that the phase-out process was stalled. There is no real new evidence to justify the delay of phase-outs. And we don't know where that block is to make a decision to carry on with this process. We have, amongst others, we've sent this report to both the departments, the Minister of DEFI, as well as the Minister of Tourism. We've had no response from any of the officials the report was sent to. Around the same time, we also sent a peer-reviewed article that showed there were definite red flags in terms of the captive lion breeding industry on wildlife populations. On that, we have had no real input or comments from the department or the ministers. So there's been extremely little in terms of communications, and that lack of communication, I think, is problematic, as that provides us with no information on what is happening. And I think the public should know what happens in terms of processes like this. It's a contentious industry, and it has gone through a very lengthy process in which every time the recommendations were to close the industry. I hope I have answered most of the questions. If not, please, I'm a little bit aware of time as well, because also need to answer some of the questions. But if I haven't answered some of the questions, please let us know. You can always get in touch by email, and we're very, very happy to provide you with further information. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Deval. I want to check with Dr. Stephanie if is there any questions that you've picked up that may have not been responded to by your colleague?
No, I think everything has been covered well, and I'd be happy to hand over to our colleagues at Humane World for Animals.
Thank you. Dr. Desling?
Thank you, Chair. We are going to split the questions and the answers amongst our team. So I will start.
Yes. Okay. When you are splitting, can you also be cautious of time? Because by 12 o'clock, we must be done with our meeting. We still
Absolutely.
have another business of the portfolio committee that we need to attend to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. So thank you to all the honourable members for all the questions. First of all, I'd just like to make a correction. So as part of the Humane World team, I am a registered ecologist, a professional natural scientist, and I have 20 years of experience with regards to managing elephants. So whilst some may see Humane World for Animals as an activist organization, I'd also just like to remind members that we also have scientists as part of our team. That is myself and my colleague, Dr. Matthew Church. And so as part of this committee this morning, I'm actually representing as a scientist as part of the work that we have done to manage elephant populations through alternative measures. So Dr. Mananga, with one of your questions with regards to practical and sustainable solutions, I presented that some of those have been done, and you were asking about tourism risks. Certainly we have tried to relay that we feel that there are substantial tourism risks, not just in what we have relayed today because of tourism not being happy with some of the options that would be not palatable to them, but also to the elephants themselves. And that is because we know that there are severe consequences and risks to lethal alternatives to the elephants because of aggression and other consequences that may be displayed by those elephants, especially in very tourist dense reserves. For example, Madikwe, which we know to be very tourism focused. And so we have very real concerns about what interventions that do focus exclusively on lethal control would look like in those populations. And so we would caution that measures that are exclusively focused on that would have severe consequences for those elephants, for the tourism product, as well as potentially for the communities living alongside those populations because of possible consequences such as breakouts, etc. So I think those are the real things that we need to think about and that we cannot just dismiss. So those are things that we need to concern ourselves with. Honourable Peach, with your question to regards of whether non-lethal measures have been used to specifically control populations in Northwest Parks, the answer is no. We have been through this discussion, certainly within this committee a number of times. Certainly range expansion and immunocontraception and water control measures have not been used in either Madikwe or in Pilanesberg. You've heard from myself and others about the immunocontraception agreement that was reached and extended to the members of the Northwest Tourism and Parks Board. We are awaiting feedback from them as to whether we can go ahead or not. We heard from Dr. Ferreira, who presented to this committee about 2 weeks ago on the various scenarios that have been extrapolated. That PETT report is still outstanding, and we are not familiar with what the final outcomes are and what those scenarios or what the final scenarios will be. And so we would hope that the combinations that are being extrapolated do include non-lethal measures, but at this stage we don't know. And so whilst we first offered support in 2020, we've been stagnating since 2023. And so this is what I referenced when I said that, these measures have been in place, not just extended by ourselves, but in policy since 2008 through the norms and standards, but they have not been taken up. And so I think this is a systemic failure that has arisen in our management authorities by not having made use of these activities that have been available to them. And so we await these opportunities to actually take them further. And then with regards to the introductions given to the actual surveys, I just want to say that our survey is also available for review, this full survey. My colleague Matthew is going to speak more broadly to this, but we specifically were advised by Savanta not to provide any leading statements or any introductions into the issues and into the questions, because that would sway participants. And so you'll notice that at the end of the report, the full suite of questions is available. And apart from asking questions about how familiar are you with the situation with regards to management of elephants in South Africa, and responses were graded as very aware to not aware. Those were basically the questions as were posed. And this was specifically so that we did not lead respondents in any specific direction at all. So I hope that answers that specific question. And so I'm going to hand over now to my colleague, Dr. Matthew Church, to answer the other specific questions, and then he will pass on to our ED, Tony, for the others. Thank you.
Mr. Church.
Thank you, Ords, and thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. So, with regard to the statistical analysis of a survey like this, whenever you're sampling a national population or something, the error on any numbers that are given is based on the actual number of people surveyed and your confidence level that you're trying to quote your answers to. So in this case, we quote a confidence level of 95%, and we sampled 1,000 people in each of our regions. So whether that was South Africa, the UK, Netherlands, or elsewhere. So the formal calculation, when you put those numbers in, based on a worst case scenario, which would be that 50% of your respondents answered one way and 50% of your respondents answered another way, that turns out an error of 3.1%. So all of the stated stats in this survey can be quoted with an uncertainty of plus or minus 1.5, essentially. In the instances where some of those numbers are higher, so like 80% of respondents answered one way or another, then that confidence error would actually come down. So this is a worst case scenario. It should also be noted that when we're considering the total number of respondents, so 5,000 people for some of those questions, then that error would come down even further and be more precise. So it'd be around about, I think, 1.39 I've just calculated. So you can take those two values as representative for all of the answers there. Then, as Ord said, we really tried to make sure that all of the questions were asked in an unbiased manner. So we didn't provide detailed information on all of the management options prior to asking whether or not culling would affect their ability or intention to visit the country. This was because we didn't want to sway the respondents one way or the other. This was at the request of Savanta through our evaluation process of the questions that we went through with them. I think that answers those two questions. And I'll hand over to Tony now.
Thank you. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Chair. And mindful of the time, I would just like to make one remark in closing. Both Honourable Managa and Honourable Peach have spoken about local economic benefit and the impact that the consumptive use of wildlife has. And we are extremely mindful of the situation, the socio-economic circumstances in South Africa, and how the economic conditions in local areas can be ameliorated and improved through a vibrant wildlife economy. However, in the case of elephant culling, the proposal to cull elephants in South Africa is not based on an economic imperative. The arguments we have been hearing to date have been ecological in nature. And so I think we should urge a little bit of caution here. If we are seeking to defend mass culling of elephants on economic grounds, then that is a separate discussion that needs to be positioned in the public and with subject matter experts accordingly. We understand that the debate around elephant culling is one in order to preserve ecology. We all know that the National Environmental Management Act requires a least harm approach to environmental management. We know that Section 24 of the Constitution speaks to preserving the environment for the benefit of present and future generations. And such benefit must, at its most fundamental level, recognize the preservation of existing ecological services and biodiversity that sustain the means of life. So I urge the committee some caution. Of course, we want to see economic benefit. Of course, we want to see poverty alleviation. We must remain steadfast in our commitment to those things until such time as they are addressed more fully. But if we have an argument about elephant conservation and culling that is posited on ecological terms, if we're going to introduce concerns about local economic benefits, then we must introduce concerns also about national economic detriment. And that is the purpose of the survey work. It's really just to highlight to the committee that in the event that South Africa embarks on mass culling, and that culling cannot be wholesalely defended as a matter of last resort. In other words, if large sections of the population feel that alternatives were not fully explored, which is what we believe we sit currently, then we will likely see adverse impacts on our inbound tourism, whether those people are coming to visit the elephants or not. I'd like to then thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to discuss this today. I believe we are all aligned on seeking the best outcomes for South Africa, and I would like to reiterate the invitation made by my colleagues that if the committee wishes to engage further on any aspects of what we've discussed today, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Honorable members, those were the responses. Digi, do you want to say something before I check if there's any follow-up questions from the members?
No, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to yourself and members for this engagement. And thank you to the presenters also for the presentations that have been tabled. Chair, I think for us as a department, indeed, in terms of policy, from HLP up to the work that has been done by the extended MTT, there is no change in policy in terms of the direction of government. However, I think one needs to also highlight that some of the delays are attributable to the continuous changes that the portfolio of DFFE has had been faced with. And I would want to put it on record, Chair, that all the ministers have been engaging intensely on this matter, up to the recent minister, whom I think as latest as last week, we had a session in the department around this in terms of taking it forward. So the current minister is indeed occupied in applying his mind, given that it is indeed a ministerial decision that has to be made in relation to this matter. So that's what I just wanted to highlight, Chair. And one obviously is taking note of the discussions of this meeting today. The other aspect, Chair, that I also just wanted to highlight, which has always been a continuous question, and I think the methodology of the survey around tourism numbers is one of the critical things that have been raised, which has been raised also by the department, even during the time of policy formulation, where you look at, I think the presentations, they are highlighting that tourism as at 2025, in terms of the Stats SA release data, was at 10.5 million tourists that would have visited. I think for me, if the sampling also would have included not only just overseas countries, 77% of that 10.5 million is actually tourists from Africa. So majority of those tourists are from Africa. So I think a fully representative of the poll also, I think, would assess. And lastly, Chair, I think, as I indicated, there is no policy change in as far as this matter is concerned. I think the EAs are applying their mind, given the fact that closing down this industry cannot necessarily be overnight. They really need to apply their mind in terms of issues of potential impact on jobs, and also issues of upskilling where required, and other issues in terms of the economic impact of the actual owners of this industry, Chair. But I think in closing, the policy direction is still remains, and we are going to be giving feedback to the minister in relation to this discussion. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, DG. Honorable members, I do not see any follow-up or hands for follow-up questions. I think your questions were responded to. I think, honorable members, our next priority as a committee is to receive a briefing from the ministerial task team to rigorously scrutinize proposed exit strategies and their socio-economic impacts. We must not repeat the missteps of the rushed energy just transition, which generated unresolved crisis for jobs and SMMEs. Instead, honorable members, we must champion a cautious, sustainable approach that protects both our domestic interest and our international reputation. And I believe that this measured vigilance is urgently needed. As our briefing with Sanbi, Ezemvelo, and Northwest revealed, that we are faced with compounding wildlife management challenges. We may have a lion crisis as a growing surplus of lions that existing facilities can no longer absorb as the industry winds down. And also the unsustainable growth rates of elephants in areas such as Madikwe may soon necessitate difficult and unpopular interventions. So by addressing these realities, honorable members, proactively with the task team, we can ensure our policy transitions are both environmentally sound and also socio-economically resilient. So with that, honorable members, let me thank the department and the presenters with their presentations and their responses, and also the input from the department led by the DG. We are done with the first part of our program, and thank you very much. Those who would like to leave the meeting are released. Thank you very much. We will then remain as the members and continue with the business of our meeting. Thank you very much. You are all released. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we then flight our agenda? Just want to check, can you, Chi and the team, make sure that those who are supposed to exit the meeting have exited? Then we can continue.
Okay.
We request that those who are not supposed to be in the meeting to exit. I see Tempelhof. I see Haresh and Dalal. Can you exit? Haresh, can you exit, please? We do not have an ordinary member by the name Haresh. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Chair, we can proceed now.
Yeah, let's proceed. With the consideration and adoption of the draft committee report on the third and fourth quarterly performance and okay.
We're gonna file it now, Chair.
Okay then. Who's going to lead us?
And Atlas is gonna lead us, Chair.
Okay. Over to you, Dr. Ginenza.
Good morning, Chair and members. I assume the report was read, so I think I will maybe with your guidance, Chair, also considering the other agenda items that are still coming. I don't know whether we want to start with what members have picked up, or we go page by page.
I think we'll have to go to what the members have picked up. We've received the presentation first, and then I want to check with the members if upon reading you have picked up anything. Not unless members are saying they did not have a chance to.
Okay, I can just rush through it, Chair. Nothing much has changed in terms of the structure of the report. The first part, which is the introduction, it covers the purpose of the report, briefly highlighting that there was a briefing on Q3 and Q4 performance and expenditures of the department and its 6 entities. They appeared before the committee and they were interrogated. That's the summary of the introduction. Then section 2 deals with the mandate of the department and its entities. They are all listed there. The mandate of the department and its entities have not changed during Q3 and Q4, and they have remained focused on the tabled annual performance plan for the 25-26 financial year, which this period under review, Q3 and Q4 they are reporting against their mandate and against their strategic plan at a high level, but most importantly, against goals or targets that were set to be achieved during Q3 and Q4. Then section 3 of the report deals with the deliberations during the briefing, roughly summarizing what was presented in terms of the performance and expenditure by the department and its entities. We received the briefing led by Minister Mania on one day, then on the other day, it was Honorable Singh. Then Ms. Shabalala was basically leading the officials of the department in covering matters raised under 3.1, subsection 3.1 on performance and expenditure. They are summarized there. And then it was self-call. They all had their board chair and also the list of acting executives there that were present during that meeting and focusing also on their performance. Then 3.3, it was Sanbi, led by Dr. Tau, the board chairperson, and Mr. Muzezi, in accounting for their performance and expenditure. Section 3.4, it was Ismangaliso Mesosibo, together with Mentuli in covering their performance and expenditure as complemented, of course, by Honorable Singh. Then on the weather service, Ms. Daya led the delegation from SOS and supported by from the executive side, inside Dr. Mpepia as the acting CEO in accounting for their performance and expenditure. Then it was the South African National Parks. Ms. Ferguson led the team together with Ms. Silo in accounting for their performance. Then section 4 of the report deals with the committee observations, including broadly the questions and the responses from the department, MLRF, Sanbi, Safcol, Ismangaliso, Weather Service, and Sand Parks. The list is not exhaustive, but it's just high-level capturing of the main themes and observation, the essence of the discussions. Then Section 5 covers the recommendations from the deliberations that had taken place. In a nutshell, the recommendations are focusing on outstanding questions that could not be answered on the day because of the technical nature of some of those questions. And most of the deadlines for submissions of those written submissions, it's either today or tomorrow. So those ones that are for today, I'm not sure how far we are with those ones, but yeah, by probably the end of business today, our recommendations are mostly directed to DFFEs and Parks. Safcol is Mangaliso. And then there's a commentary, which is a conclusion of the report on the last page. That is the summary of the content of the report, Chair. So
Thank you.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if members would like or Chair would like us to focus on what the observations, or we just focus on the recommendations.
Thank you, Nhlanhla. I see the hand of Honorable de Blok.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nhlanhla and the A team for putting together another excellent report. Chair, the only question I have one question, one change. The first question is, does the report format not normally include the attendance register of members present? Is that only for meeting minutes? And then the only change that I have is on page 6, DG Chabalala's name is spelt wrong. It's Shabalala and it should be Chabalala. It's a missing T. I think I'm just sensitive to it, Chair, because my name is spelt wrong so often. They're under
Yeah,
3.1.
yeah, now I get it. Yeah, it will be noted and corrected, Honorable de Blok. Yes, Nhlanhla?
Oh, yeah. We are trying to limit, Honorable de Blok, the duplication and between the minutes of the day and the report. So the content is largely split. Like minute-related information is captured in the minutes, like the attendance and all that. But there is no fixed format in terms of the structure of whether to include, because I've seen others, they also expand to the mandate of the committee, include reflections from the previous quarters, which we do that in the, for example, in the annual report, where we take the whole year as well as the final report. So there is no fixed style, but that can be decided by the committee if the committee feels we need to expand other sections, or such as that we add maybe certain areas that can be done. It's the committee report.
Thank you, Nhlanhla. Honorable de Blok, your hand is up again.
So just in response, Chair, I'm happy with Nhlanhla's explanation. I don't think we need to include it as a duplicate of minutes taken. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And I think the error on the surname of DG Chabalala has been corrected.
Yes, Chair.
Can I then get a mover for the adoption of the report? Honorable members, Honorable de Blok, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. I'd gladly move for the adoption of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Honorable members, can I then get a second? Honorable Peters?
Thank you, Chair. I second the adoption of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. The report has been adopted, duly adopted. Can we then go to the first set of minutes?
Chair, the set of minutes that is flighted on the screen is the meeting we had with Sasol. and other authorities regarding the complaint that was laid by Mr. Erasmus. You can scroll down to me. Those were the organizations that were in attendance, as well as the members, followed by the officials. Chair made the opening remarks, and we also welcomed our new minister, Maynard, and he also gave opening remarks. Apologies were noted, and the agenda was adopted. This was followed by the briefing by Sasol, and it was led by Mr. Kahla. The second presentation was the Government municipality, that's the summary chair. The mayor addressed the committee, supported by the municipal manager. And these are the clarity-seeking questions that the members raised to Sasol and to the local municipality, followed by the responses by Sasol and the municipality. And then Chair, Department of Water and Sanitation, DFFE, the Public Protector, and the South African Human Rights also presented. This is a summary of their presentations, and this was the questions that were posed by members to each institution. It's a summary. And the responses to the members' questions. And then we considered our third term program chair. And lastly, these were the 3 resolutions that the committee made. I have not received the responses from Sasol, but I will follow up as well today. But it's still early. I'm sure around 4, I'll get a response. Thank you, Chair. That is the set for the 4th of August.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable members, those were the minutes for the meeting of the 4th of August. Can I then get a mover for the adoption of the minutes? Honorable De Blok.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Chileka and the A team for another excellent set of minutes. I'd like to move to adopt.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Honorable members, can I get a second? Okay, I second the
second, Chair.
Yes. Okay. Can we then move to another set of minutes?
6th of August. Chair and members, on that day we were dealing with the quarterly reports. So the attendance that Honorable De Blok was referring to, it is captured in the set. So those were the members that were in attendance in the meeting. Followed by the remarks by Chairperson, apologies, the adoption of the agenda, overview by the Minister, briefing by SNB, South African Weather Service, followed by the discussions. So as stated, the deliberations and discussions are contained in the report that we just adopted. And those are the resolutions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable members, can I then get a mover for the adoption of the minutes and a seconder as well? Honorable Manaka, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I raised my hand to adopt the minutes as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable De Block. I see your hand is up.
Seconded, Chairperson.
Thank you. Chi, can we go
Yes,
to
Chair, is the 6th also third and fourth quarterly reports, Chair. It's by subcalls and parks. Attendance by members. Opening remarks and welcoming by the chairperson. Briefing by staff call. Followed by Senpax. And Isimangaliso. And the resolutions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chi. Can I get a mover for the adoption of the minutes? And okay, second, Honorable Mkiza. Unmute, Honorable Mkiza. Kabazela, unmute your phone. Okay, Honorable Managa.
Honorable Chairperson, I raised my hand again to second to adopt the minutes as presented by
Thank
our
you.
secretary. Thank you. I so
Thank
move.
you, Honorable Managa. Honorable Kumalo.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I second the adoption of this minute. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. The minutes have been adopted. Those are the 11th of August. Okay.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Chair.
Okay.
The last set is the 11th of August, where we were briefed by the Northwest and somebody regarding the challenges at the Kirstenbosch Garden. Those were the members that were in attendance, officials, opening remarks by the chair. Apologies received and adoption of the agenda. An overview by Honorable Singh. Followed by the Northwest presentation, which was led by the board chairperson. And then these were the questions, the highlights that were raised by the honorable members and the responses by Didet. And then Chair, second presentation was by the South African National Biodiversity Institute on the infrastructure challenges at the Kirstenbosch. And those were the questions that the members raised. And those were the resolutions, Chair. And we can stay on that page for the resolutions. Thank you. Chair.
Thank you. Can I then get a mover for the adoption in the second of this last set of minutes? Honorable members. Honorable Peters. Honorable Peters, I cannot hear you. Oh, she's kicked out. Honorable Mokoena.
Thank you, Chair. I move for the adoption of these minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mokoena. I think Honorable Shaila had a problem. Honorable Manag.
Okay.
Honorable Malaka.
Thank you, Chair. I second the move on adoption of the minutes made by Honorable Mokoena. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. I think we have reached the end of our today's agenda, honorable members.
Yes, Chair.
Let me take this opportunity and thank all of you for attending the meeting and the inputs and the questions that you've raised. And also thank our A team, our support staff, for always being available and effective. Thank you very much, honorable members. The meeting is closed.
Sorry, Chair. There's a hand
Yes.
from Honorable De Block, but
Oh.
also from our side as well.
Oh, okay, Honorable De Block.
Thanks, Chair. I'm sorry to go back to the last set of minutes. There was just no time frame given on the resolutions to detect and to was it Sandy? I believe that you did give a time frame, Chair, and I wondered if we could just capture that in the minutes, if I'm correct in my remembering.
Oh,
As
yes.
a
Yes, I
small
will.
amendment before we, I think we can still take it as adopted, but with that small amendment to be made by the A team.
It's the 1 September.
Oh, okay, there it is. Okay, I missed it. Apologies. It was at the bottom.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was at the bottom. Okay. Okay, thank you. Chi, you said that there's a hand also from your side.
Oh, yes, Chair. Usually on our last meeting, we usually submit or give members the draft program for the next term. Unfortunately, we don't have focus areas or the parliamentary program, but it looks like we're coming back mid-September. So I just wanted to give that message to members. So as soon as we get the focus areas, we will share the draft program for the next term. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, now we will be flexible. We will also use our WhatsApp platform to share the information if there's any new information. Noted,
Thank you.
Chi.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
meeting. Thank you for that. The meeting is adjourned, honorable members and colleagues. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.